Hey everyone, welcome back to On the Fence Movie Reviews. I am Adrian, joined by my co-host Rob, and we are going to be doing a spoiler-filled review of Spider-Man No Way Home. So get ready.
Repeat that. Repeat that one more time because we're gonna spoil it.
Get ready because we're going to spoil this film like crazy. So, if you want to know our thoughts and what we sort of our overall rating of Spider-Man No Way Home, go check out our non-spoiler review. It is on our channel on YouTube, so on the Ben's Movie Reviews. But here we're going to just talk about everything that will be spoiled and all that. So
everything we couldn't talk about in the spoiler-free one, we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, and we're just going to get really deep into it. So you've been warned. Rob, I'm going to defer to you real quick and say,
okay.
In terms of spoilers, what was like the biggest surprise in this film for you?
I mean,
yeah, let's just go into that.
Yeah, let's do this. I mean, come on, it's got to be Andrew and Toby showing up into this movie as Spider-Man from other universes or other the multiverse. So that's right there is just probably the biggest surprise, the biggest, where the crowd I was, the auditorium I was in just erupted in deafening noise and applause and standing up and ovations where they were just like, I could not hear the dialogue of the movie anymore because, and I'm right there with them. I'm just like, yeah. But let me say this, because I wrote this down. This is something I wanted to point out and say, and we have to thank the best Spider-Man movie ever for this movie, because without that movie,
Which one is that one, Rob?
Hold on. Without that movie, this movie does not happen, and that is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Thanks to the success of that movie and the story of that movie, we get No Way Home, because it's pretty much almost kind of the same, they use, the whole, bring in other Spider-Man, and this has been done in the comics, but I think if we don't have the success of Into the Spider-Verse, we probably don't see No Way Home. So you got to thank you so much to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for that, because of that, we get, I don't know how high I'm going to rank this Spider-Man movie, but it's up there. It's up there for me, but like I said, Toby showing up and Andrew showing up in this movie, it was just jaw-dropping, amazing. It mind blown. I was just like, in the back of my mind, I was like, it could happen, but then there was a small little right here. It was like, well, it could not happen.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the internet and rumors and Reddit threads and all this other stuff. Like, I stay away from all the fan theories and all that nonsense, because like more often than not they're wrong. Right. But then also too is like, I just don't want things spoiled for me. I just want to go in there in the moment and experience it.
Right.
But it was so hard with this film to avoid, and just like even big media outlets were trying to report on, Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire possibly being in this film. And I was like, okay. And Andrew Garfield has a film that just came out about a month ago called Tick, Tick, Boom. And he's been doing the media circuit and interviews and all that stuff. And all anybody wanted to ask him was, hey, are you in No Way Home? Are you in No Way Home? And he would constantly deny it. And I think it was like his last interview, which was like maybe 2 weeks ago, two and a half weeks ago, that he did. And you could see him like actually get kind of frustrated with the question.
Right.
That it actually sold me to believe like maybe he's not in this movie. And when I saw that, and you know, my thing is because my hope was that they would be him, but especially Tobey Maguire.
Okay.
Because again, Tobey's still like my ultimate Spider-Man. You know, so I would have been like super disappointed. So I was like trying not to get my hopes up, but they were already up. And so like after that interview, I was like, ah, crap, maybe they won't be in this film. And if they're not in this film, I'm going to be so disappointed and like really upset. And I'm like, why would they bring back all these villains and not bring back, you know, the Spider-Man? But yeah, when they showed up and we finally, because again, I was still nervous. Even up until that point, I was like, pun intended, on the fence about whether or not they were going to come or be in this film. And so when they finally had it, like you, my audience just erupted, even with Andrew Garfield. I didn't know how they would respond to him because everybody, he's kind of like everybody's like lowest ranked Spider-Man.
Not for me though. Not for me.
Really? Okay. Well, we'll talk about that later.
Okay. Go ahead,
but anyway, so when I saw the reaction and everybody was just getting really excited. And then when they brought in Tobey, it just went bonkers. Yep. And people were just screaming Tobey and jumping up and even myself, I found myself getting into the hype because like with the audience, because I'm a pretty reserved person. I don't really cheer, but
yes,
I found myself getting into it and cheering and clapping and like, yeah, go Tobey, you know? And so it was just such a great and fulfilling surprise. And it was like almost like I don't know, maybe I'm being kind of dumb and nostalgic, but it was almost like Spider-Man coming full circle for me because I saw the very first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire like 19 years ago at the same I saw it at the same theater and in that same room that I watched No Way Home. So it just kind of felt like it was full circle for me.
Also, you're old. You know, you're old.
Yeah. So like 17, 18-year-old Adrian who watched that first Spider-Man is now many years older.
Yes.
And yeah, everything just hurts now. Ibuprofen is my best friend. That's why, that's why that scene where he's trying to crack his back, I could relate. It's funny because the first Spider-Man, like all the little high school nonsense and drama and trying to make sense of life and all that, right, you know, you could relate. And now he's like old Spider-Man trying to crack his back. Again, I can relate. But yeah, no, that was the biggest surprise for me. And yeah, I really loved that. There's a couple other things we want to talk about.
Let's get into it. Let's do it.
That moment with Aunt May.
Oh, geez.
And again, this iteration of Spider-Man, we never got like the Uncle Ben death and that whole like him stepping into it, because again, with the previous two, we got that moment, right?
Right.
And then so when she did it, her saying the line, with great responsibility, or with great power comes great responsibility, it wasn't just a cheap throwaway moment for these for the writers. They gave weight and meaning to it, right? And like it wasn't just like, oh well, we got to have that line in there, so let's just throw it in there, you know. It was unexpected, and when it happened, I found myself even like, you know, again getting emotional.
Yeah,
it was like, wow, it gave weight and you felt it, and it was like, wow, okay. And that's again, I didn't mention it in the non-spoiler review, but here with that moment, I started to feel, and I was finally sold on Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Like he is now Spider-Man. He's no longer a kid. He's like Spider-Man. Like he's matured into that now. And you know, so with that moment, it kind of like solidified that and kind of like pushed him into that moment. Because again, remember, like with the previous two Spider-Man, that's like kind of what that moment sort of what pushes him into becoming Spider-Man, right? So Tom Holland Spider-Man never had that moment, and now he gets it, and you can see, okay, now he's Spider-Man. But I don't know, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting it. And it along the lines of what you're saying, you watch, it sucks that May had to die, but like you were saying, those lines weren't thrown away, and they even reference it later on in the movie where Andrew and Toby's their Spider-Man are talking about the same lines. They reference that later on in the movie, and it's just like that was like almost a growing up moment for Tom Holland's Peter Parker, or Tom Holland's Spider-Man, if you will. And the moment was heavy. You don't really, because Aunt May, she looks like she's gonna be okay. She looks hurt, but and then this happens, and then you get that moment with her and Peter, and you just see how Tom Holland's Peter Parker Spider-Man is just like devastated, and you get those lines, and it's just like the whole everything, that whole scene, just the way the actors played it out, and the way it was heavy. It was heavy. The theater was heavy. The moment was heavy, but at the same time, you saw growth in this character, and it was a great scene, very emotional scene that I think was needed to progress this Peter Parker.
Oh yeah, for sure. And and when she got up, right, when his glider kind of hits her,
right,
I was thinking, oh, that's kind of reminiscent to the moment to when he kind of impales himself in the first Spider-Man.
Right.
But then when she gets up, and I was like, oh, okay, they're not, like, they didn't go there. Like, I was thinking, oh man, they're gonna, and I was like, oh, she's fine. But then when she dropped down, it was like, whoa, well, maybe she's not. And then that moment happened. So it was a total surprise. I got to talk about the action, the villains, because I didn't mention it before. Doc Ock, that first fight scene was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it was amazing.
It was really, really good. It was a great, like, and then even that line where it's like, oh, we got competition because he's wearing the Iron Spider suit, which was really cool. But the fight scene where he goes full Green Goblin in the apartment building there, and he is just fighting Peter Parker, Spider-Man, Tom Holland. That whole fight scene is just awesome. And I didn't mention in the last one, but in this film, I always thought that William Dafoe, his Green Goblin, was one of the best comic book villains that we have had. And in this film, he solidifies that.
Yes.
Because he is so good. He is so menacing. And in a day and age where, this is my biggest gripe with the filmmakers, and is that they try to make the villains a little bit more of like sympathetic, or have some sort of like deep backstory, and a little more ambiguous, where it's like, well, you don't really know if they're actually good or bad, and like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
The thing that makes his Green Goblin so good is because he's a classic villain of just pure, unadulterated evil.
Yes.
And when you have that meeting with your hero, it makes for great conflict. And that's what makes Green Goblin so good. So he solidified that in this film. And the way he is constantly just menacing, and constantly attacking, and constantly just almost like hunting, if you will, like Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Like, he's just after him, like he's got a vendetta against him. It is so good, and I just loved it. Like, I could watch him do Green Goblin again and again and again, like forever, because he was just that good. And even the part where in that fight scene, Tom Holland is just kind of laying into him with a couple of punches,
right?
And it's funny because he's taking the first few hits he takes, and then by the third one, you start to see a smile on Green Goblin's face, like he's enjoying the rage coming out of Peter Parker coming after him. And then even in the end, where he's like, I want to kill you, he's like, good boy, or whatever the line is. And it's like, he's trying to push him and get under his skin. And it's good. I don't know. What were your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I mean, yeah, like there's just so much you can talk about here. The action, when they're on the bridge, and Peter's fighting Doc Ock. There's so many cool fight scenes. There's so many cool moments. Even the comedy, I would say this, and this is where I think it differs a little. Like Marvel has their style of comedy. I get it.
Yeah.
But this was like how you were saying, where he's like, oh, I think we got competition. Like I could see Doc Ock saying something like that when the Iron Spider suit and his spider legs would come out. I could see, and it wasn't forced. The comedy wasn't forced. The comedy wasn't corny or cheesy. It played right into what was going on, and I liked it. It didn't take me out of what was going on. Again, William Dafoe as the Goblin, man, that guy is just just the way he plays the character, and how in the movie he's like kind of like he puts Osborn back, and I mean he lets Osborn kind of like pretend to take over kind of thing, so he could trick them, because the two personalities. Then when he finally takes over, he's like, oh, I wouldn't never let him, do this or that. And just the way he plays the character. And Jamie Foxx as Electro, man, like I think what a huge what's the word I'm looking for?
Like an improvement, or
well, just a way to, I guess, not rewrite the character, but just a way to like a mulligan on that Electro. Like we get this cool Electro who's a little different, it's obviously different universe. And I just think my surprise for this movie was how good Jamie Foxx was, and even his comedy, his little quick remarks, or even how he says, he was hoping that, Spider-Man would be black, because he was helping people and stuff like that. He's all, man, so the crowd I was in got the reference to like a Miles Morales.
When he goes, well, there's got to be a black Superman or black Spider-Man out there somewhere.
Yeah, so the little things like that, little callbacks, like they even have the when they're all in the lab and Ned's like, Peter, and like all the three people, the Spider-Man. Yeah. He's like, we're all Peter Parker. They're all just pointing at each other, and like little things like that, where it's just like, okay, like that's the fan service that is cool. And that's not the reason why the movie was good. It's just the cherry on top of how great this movie was. I'll say this, the two things, the kind of the fight chase scene with Peter and Doctor Strange, in the mirror, dimension. I thought that was amazing. I just love the way Doctor Strange, his power, his skill set of ability and what he can do. And then it also showed how smart Peter Parker is, because in this mirror dimension, his brain is working. He's like, oh, this, oh, this is what this is.
Like,
okay,
this is geometry.
Yeah, so exactly. So he's quick thinking.
Like, math is cooler than science.
Yeah,
or not cooler than science. It's like cooler than magic or something like that.
Yeah. So he just and then he just does these things. So that was really cool. But then also we got to talk about that final battle where the three Spider-Men are teaming up, go ahead.
And I was gonna say, before we go into the final battle, I want to mention something about Doctor Strange.
Okay, go ahead.
I loved all of that and how he was in there for like the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But what I loved even more was how little he was in this film.
Okay.
Because again, my biggest gripe, and I didn't mention the last video because I didn't want to spoil it.
Right.
But my gripe was that, like I had mentioned before, was that the first film, it was like, oh, he's leaning on Tony Stark. The second film, it was like Nick Fury and Happy and those characters. And this one, I was concerned that it was going to be like him tag teaming with Doctor Strange the whole movie. And the fact that he locks Doctor Strange in that mirror dimension,
right,
and then you don't see him pretty much till the very end, again, is what I appreciated, because it was like, okay, he's doing this pretty much on his own. He gets the help from the other Spider-Man, like in that final act, but it was like him on his own, and it's him like figuring things out on his own
Right.
instead of just relying on Doctor Strange and having like this MCU cameo. It's like, oh, here, remember that MCU character you love? We're gonna throw him in here.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I appreciated about that, was that he didn't overshadow the whole
Right.
thing. And so
Right.
that's what I really appreciated about him.
Also, before we get into that final, the climax of the movie, speaking of cameo, we get a cameo from Matt Murdock.
Yes, Charlie Cox as Daredevil. Yes.
Yes. So that was awesome to see, because you're seeing them there at the table, and then he pops up into frame, and obviously the whole place erupted.
Oh yeah, as soon as you see his stick.
Yep.
Like, it was like, I was like, Daredevil.
Yep.
And I don't know about your crowd, but the crowd I was in, they got excited. Everybody was cheering and clapping for him. And it was like really awesome to see. And then that moment where he catches the brick from the window.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, how did you just do that?
I'm a really good lawyer. I'm a really good lawyer. So that,
again, little lines like that
yeah,
just make it like an enjoyable, fun film to watch that has tons of replay value.
Yeah. So I mean, that right there is awesome to see. Hopefully that goes somewhere, because I think Charlie Cox is, as Daredevil, probably one of the best castings when it comes to superheroes.
And to go into a side note, we had Vincent Dernafio, or I think that's how you pronounce his name, as Wilson Fisk, Kingpin. Him and Charlie Cox were perfectly cast. They were both phenomenally great. So now that they're kind of into the MCU and how they're going to use both of them, I don't know, but I'm just happy to see them in there and that they get to continue on, because when their shows were all canceled on Netflix, it was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I feel like in that, I know you couldn't talk about it in the last movie, but I feel like it's gonna work good the way, because I feel like Spider-Man by the end of this movie isn't the new Iron Man. He's kind of back to your neighborhood Spider-Man. So I feel like that's gonna go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And no, I was gonna say, and I forgot to mention that, but yeah, with that end shot, again, the problems I had with the first two Spider-Man is that Spider-Man has always been synonymous with New York, and like that, like what you said, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which is like New York, the big city. That's where he's kind of stationed. The previous two films didn't really feel like very New York-y, if you will, because the first one he ends up like in the Washington Monument. The second one he ends up in London, so he's not even New York at all. So it's like here at the very end of that last shot, when you see him, he's swinging through, like, I think he goes by like the Rockefeller Center during Christmas with that Christmas tree and all of that. So it's like he's in New York, and now he's Spider-Man now, and and that's what I thought was really cool. But yeah, let's talk about that end battle scene, because there's a lot that happened there. And one of the first things I want to mention before I forget, Andrew Garfield, and I know you had said he's not the worst one for you, and we'll talk about that right now.
Yeah.
But the moments that he had in this film were really emotional. And when he starts talking to him, when they all sort of share their moments of pain, he talks about Gwen Stacy, and how he couldn't save her and how he blames her. So in that end battle scene where they mimic that moment of MJ, where Zendaya's character falling from the scaffolding of the Empire, or the Statue of Liberty, and Tom Holland's Spider-Man can't save her, he jumps in and saves her from falling, which is how Gwen Stacy dies. She falls to her death. And so to have that moment, which I found myself like kind of getting choked up a little bit, I was like, wow. But to have that character redemption, and have those emotional moments, even like, it wasn't just for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but even to have those emotional moments sort of redemption for these other Spider-Man and these other characters. It was like, wow, that's what gave a lot of weight. And it was kind of like, the funny part was like, hey, you're amazing. Okay.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
amazing. Like,
oh, when Toby's telling Andrew, like, yeah, you're amazing. You're amazing.
You know, so it's like, yeah, he wasn't a terrible Spider-Man. I think it was just those films that he was in just weren't very good. But yeah, to have that moment in this final battle scene was really emotional, very cool, very, you know, and again, I think it reminded a lot of people, especially the ones that didn't really pay too much attention to those two iterations or two films that he had done, is that like, hey, he's actually a really good Spider-Man, you know?
He is. Now I'll make it quick because I see the clock there and it says we've got about 8 minutes, but
okay.
I think Andrew overall was the best Spider-Man. Like, he's not the greatest Peter Parker, but as Spider-Man that I know from the comics, I think he personified for me the best Spider-Man. Toby, he was in the best movies. I think Tom is his Spider-Man was it personified how we got like a teenage high schooler Spider-Man. So in no way do I think any of them were bad. I just think they all were Spider-Man and Peter Parker in a different way. And for me personally, I just feel like Andrew was the best Spider-Man. Now, I'll say this, the final battle was awesome. You get some callbacks and you get some funny comparisons where they're, you know, Tom is telling the other two Spider-Man, like, I worked in a team, the Avengers, and they're like, what, who, you know, they don't know.
Awesome.
They don't
what
know
are the Avengers.
Yeah, what are the Avengers? They don't know who the Avengers are because they don't have Avengers.
Rock band.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, you play music. So like little things like that. And Tom, his Spider-Man kind of stepping up, and their sequences where they're kind of swinging off each other and fighting all these.
Yes, when they say, okay, let's do this, and they go running off the scaffolding and jump into that moment. Dude, that moment was just so awesome to see. And then everybody, I think, in our theater just completely lost their mind.
Yeah, same here. It was great. It was bonkers.
Great. And then when they land and do their like superhero Spider-Man pose, it was over. It was like
I thought it was hilarious how they were all talking about, well, you know, they're all Spider-Man, they're all Peter Parker, and then they're, you know, Tom Holland's like, okay, well, I'm Spider-Man 1, you're Spider-Man 2, and they tell Andrew, you're Spider-Man 3, and Andrew's like, yeah, I'm Spider-Man 3. So like kind of like referencing that Andrew's like the third best Spider-Man out of Tom and Toby, like little things like that. I thought the comedy, it was perfect. It was funny, but you know, that last scene on the scaffold, you know, the what was it?
The shield,
the was it not the I'm keeping the Eiffel Tower. It's not the Eiffel Tower.
The Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty. Yeah, when you know that last battle when they're fighting there, and you know, against the all the other villains, and it was just so awesome. Everything about it, the fighting was great, the comedy was great, the storyline, the redemption of Andrew Spider-Man, you know, getting to save MJ, and you felt the relief come off when you see his face and he's holding her, and it just, the overall, man, this movie is amazing. Like, this is just one of the best comic book movies that I can think of. That's just that.
Wow, that's extremely high praise.
It is. You know what? I think about rewatchability. I already got my tickets to go see it again in a couple of days because that was the earliest showing that I could get where it wasn't packed, because
where it wasn't completely sold out.
Yeah, everyone. This movie, it is. We were talking about this before. This movie is going to have legs, and not because it's a Marvel movie or it's a Spider-Man movie. This movie is going to have legs because of how great it is. In the same way Infinity War had legs, because people were going to watch it 4 times, 5 times, 2 times, 3 times. They were going to watch it over and over. And I see the same thing happening with this movie, because not just the fan service, because if Toby and Andrew were in it and it was just like, oh, okay, well, they're in it, cool, like, all right, you know, and it's not a good movie. It was
like fan service with a purpose. And
it was. So people that, like I kept saying, cherry on top. People are going to go see this movie because of that, but then they're going to keep going to see it because of how awesome this movie is. So you know, take it away, Adrian, because I won't stop talking about how great this movie is.
Final battle between Goblin and Peter when he's like, I want to kill you myself. That's why I didn't kill you with the box thing. And he's fighting, and he gets to that point where he almost kills him, and then Toby stops him. And then it was like, okay, he stopped him, and then Goblin spears Toby in the back.
It spears him in the back.
And everybody was like, no, Toby. And I was like ready to, I'm pretty sure the theater would have burned down if Toby died. But you know, that moment was really good because it was even a moment of redemption for Tom Holland's Spider-Man because he had gone too far.
Right.
And the look that Toby gives him is like, you don't want to do this. Like, don't like go this path because there's no coming back from it. Right. That like sort of moment. And, you know, we didn't talk about it, but the sacrifice that Tom Holland's character makes, you really feel it at the end where he goes into the cafe where MJ is working and Ned is there and they both get into MIT, and you see like he's kind of alone. He's his own person now, and now he's living in a really crappy small studio apartment thing going on, and you see the kind of fallout of the decision he makes to basically say the only way to stop this is if everybody completely forgets who I am. And so that's what he does. He makes that sacrifice. And, you know, to see where he ends up, again, it feels like Spider-Man. It feels like, you know, because Spider-Man is pretty much a loner. He is a guy who has a hard time trying to balance real life and like kind of like choosing between the two.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I really loved, again, because you feel those moments here. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel like, oh, we got to make it really dark or sad. It was just like it was, you know. And no, and so I just love that about this film. Quickly, let's talk about the post credit. Venom, he's in like some bar in Mexico, and the guy's giving him the whole story and all that, and then he gets kind of sucked back into his universe, and then you see just a little drop of the symbiote on the bar there. So how that plays into the MCU and what's going to happen with that, I don't know.
We will find out.
I was a little confused on that because in the thing they mentioned, like, these are all like people and things that are coming for Peter Parker, and that's how they're coming in here. But Venom didn't even know who he was, so I was a little confused by that. But anyway, Rob, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we covered it all. Spider-Man No Way Home is a great movie. Go check it out, and stay for the mid-credit scene and the post-credit scene. Well, it's not a post-credit scene. It's a trailer for Doctor Strange. Yes.
Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. Check it out.
1 minute. 1 minute.
We got 1 minute. So I will take it away. Guys, if there are any spoiler moments and things that you wanted to hear us talk about, why don't you talk about them in the comment section, and we'll have a spoiler-filled discussion with you. We'd love to have that discussion going. Also, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and share with all of your friends. And also follow us on Instagram @OnTheFenceMovieReviews.
And remember, we will catch you on the fence.